what we're going to do today is have a look at how we belong in the skies, or how we don't, and how we deal with emergencies, medical emergencies in particular, when things go wrong. Now, you know that there's a problem when you hear the cabin chime going bing bong. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a doctor on board, will he or she please make themselves known to a member of the cabin crew? Now, I know we've got a couple of doctors on board with us on this cruise, but I promise not to identify them in case they get inundated with people wanting free consultations, rather than going to the ship's doctor downstairs there. He doesn't want to talk about your bunions, your sciatica, your hemorrhoids when he's on holiday. But don't worry quite yet. It's probably not that both I and the co-pilot have eaten the past-its sell-by-date fish and are lying unconscious on the flight deck. And they won't be paging for that hero pilot, like in Airplane, to come and land the airplane quite yet. Another thing we're going to look at in a moment is color blindness. And now, on previous cruises, I've been approached by young people who are considering a career in aviation, and they are very, very surprised to learn that they have a degree of color blindness, or not color blindness so much as color perception abnormality, it's called nowadays. It's not blind, they're not blind, they can see perfectly well. They just see things differently from the way that normally color-sighted people will see. And my advice to them is, before you even think about spending money on flying, if you want to be a commercial pilot, is you must go and get your Class 1 medical certificate. This means that you can fly any aircraft in any capacity as a co-pilot, captain, because you have reached the top level of the medical fitness which is required. They don't require us to be Superman, although you might wonder, looking at me, you know. They don't require us to be Superman. We just have to have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 mouths, most of us. And so anyway, we'll have a look at that. I'll give you a little test, and I will probably detect at least one person in the audience who did not know that they were colorblind before this morning. We'll have a look at how we keep our balance on Earth, and how our eyes can deceive us. Our organs of balance can deceive us in various things. We'll look at what happens when those oxygen masks drop down. Why do they drop down? Normally because we've lost cabin pressure, and how the body reacts to this loss of oxygen in the cabin. We'll have a look at some instances where I have had to page for a doctor on board, and what happened there. I didn't establish whether our doctors on board have ever actually been called upon on an aircraft. Doctors in the States especially used to be very reticent at coming forward to help, because there was this dreadful litigation culture in the United States, and they were frightened that if they treated a patient and then something went wrong, that the patient would sue them. This is no longer the case. They have an automatic built-in protection, and it's called the Good Samaritan Clause, that unless a passenger that the doctor has helped can prove gross negligence or gross incompetence, that doctor's in the clear. In a court of law, he tries to help a patient, the patient dies, that doctor walks. There's no question of that. Because he's got limited equipment, limited diagnostic equipment, he cannot be expected to save a life on every occasion that somebody is taken ill. The other question somebody asked is, do we actually eat separate meals? Yes, we do. On board the aircraft, we always eat separate meals. If I have the steak, the first officer will have the fish, or vice versa, to make sure that we don't both eat the same thing, which is a bit stupid, really, because we go out for dinner the previous night to the same restaurant and both have the lobster thermidor or whatever it might be, and that can take 12 or 14, 18 hours to get through the system before you actually fall over with food poisoning. So yes, on board the aircraft we do eat different foods. And let me just see what's happened here. Now, it's very unusual that we do not have a doctor on board the flight. Normally we carry 400 passengers. We will have at least one doctor on board. And they're more willing to come forwards nowadays because, as a thank you gesture, the airline will normally give them an upgrade to business class or first class, or the next higher class than the one they're traveling in, for their next sector or for their return journey. Now, I frankly do not have a good record when it comes to people expiring on my aircraft. I had 3 deaths in 40 years of flying and only 1 birth. So I haven't balanced the books at the end of my career. And we're coming back from Dhaka in Bangladesh one night, and this dear old lady, she was taken very, very ill on board the aircraft. We paged for a doctor, and this delightful little Bangladeshi doctor, he looked a bit like Doogie Howser, MD. He was about 4 foot nothing, and he looked about 14. But he assured us that he was a doctor, and he didn't have his license up to hand. But we can't doubt if a doctor comes forward and says, "Yes, I am a doctor. What can I do?" We had to take his word for the fact that he was a doctor. This lady, I think she had congestive heart failure, and there was nothing that he could do to save her life. And sadly, she expired on the flight. And our cabin crew in those days, they had to perform CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, for 20 minutes. Now, this is the sort of recommended time when somebody is unconscious and there's no heartbeat, there's no breathing, that you keep going for 20 minutes or until some qualified medical personnel can take over. So they'd taken this poor lady up to the first class galley at the front of the aircraft. First class was empty because it was a flight full of Bangladeshis, and they simply can't afford to travel first class. So this is the only time this poor lady had been in first class in her life. And they had her laid out on the galley floor, and they were doing the CPR to the best of their ability. And the doctor came up and he said, the lady is dead. Lady is dead. And he said, "Why are you continuing?" And they said, "Because we have to continue for 20 minutes with CPR to see if we can bring her back to life." He said, "You can do it for 20 years." She not coming back. A very old law, which has now been done away with, thank goodness, was that if we were flying between two places, and this happened to be between Bombay and Singapore, if we were flying between two places and a passenger died on board the aircraft, and we were less than halfway there, if the country that we'd left was the passenger's country of domicile, not of residence. Your domicile is where you're born, where you grow up, where you live, where all your family or your friends are, and where you would plan, all things being equal, to end your days. That's the country that you would like to end your days in. That's your domicile. So we were supposed to turn round and go back to the country of domicile. As I say, this is long, long time ago. But we were flying between Bombay and Singapore one night, and this poor lady, again, she was taken ill, but she expired very, very quickly. And we'd paid for the doctor, had another doctor on board, amazingly. And he was there, and he was trying to find the pulse. And I'd gone back to see what was happening. And I explained the situation to him. And he said, "Well, are we halfway there yet?" And I said, "No, we're not quite." He said, "Okay." He said, "I think I can feel just a..." Yeah, I've got something there. So I went to the interphone in the cabin, and I've called up the flight deck, and I said to the co-pilot, "Just let me know when we're past the halfway point, will you?" "Yeah, still there." So he called back a couple of minutes later. He said, "We're just past the equal time point, Captain." The doctor said, "Ah, dear, we've lost her." He knew the game, I knew the game, we all knew the game. We weren't going to turn around with 400 people on board and take them to where they didn't want to go. My berth on board was, again, it was an Indian lady, but this time we were going from Bombay to London. And she must have been a very, very pregnant lady, but it's amazing what you can hide under a sari, especially if you're a certain dimension to start with. And it's not your first child. So I think she must have known she was pregnant, but she probably did not know how pregnant she was. Anyway, she went into labor on the aircraft, and as luck would have it, can you believe, did we have a doctor on board? No, we didn't have a doctor on board. We had something much better. We had a midwife. Can you believe your luck? Because doctors are hopeless at childbirth. They probably haven't done one since their medical student days. But this delightful midwife took control of the whole situation. It was a completely natural delivery. whatever happens, the placenta was delivered and everything quite naturally. I'll say it wasn't her first child. The mother knew what was happening. The midwife knew what was happening. And it was just a fantastic experience. She gave birth, and it was all fine. When we got to talking to Heathrow Air Traffic Control, we had to give the number of passengers on board the aircraft. You're way ahead of me. And I said, we've got 392 souls, we call them souls on board. And the guy said, it says 391 on your flight plan. I said, it was when we set off, but we've got we've got an extra one now. And this this Indian lady, she was in fact a British national anyway, so there was no question as to what nationality the baby was going to adopt. It wasn't as if there was any question. Was it, whose airspace was it born in? Whose airplane was it born in? What nationality was the mother? What was its next destination? So it was a British baby, even if it was born over, I can't think where we were now, Turkey or somewhere like that. Now, we do sometimes have to carry out emergency diversions if a passenger has suffered a heart attack, a serious stroke, or they're suffering uncontrolled pain, like renal colic, if they're passing kidney stones or something like that, and we can't control the pain to a relatively satisfactory level, then we will make an emergency diversion to the nearest suitable airport and city with hospital facilities. Now, when we go for our initial medical, they have to make sure that we are going to last the course. That, as I say, we have to be reasonably fit to start with. And if we're blind or deaf or dumb or anything, that sort of tends to preclude us a bit. So they check eyesight for long, medium, and short vision, because we have to be able to read a chart at night with very, very small print on it. We have to be able to read at that sort of distance away from us. We have to see the instruments at about the distance to that computer there. And we have to be able to see right to the horizon, of course, as well, and pick up aircraft on the horizon, which is not always easy to see, because if you've got nothing to focus on, we suffer, or the human beings suffer from what they call empty field myopia. If you've got nothing to focus on, your eyes will focus on a spot between 10 and 15 feet away in front of you. So it won't focus on anything closer, it won't focus on anything further away. So that's why we have to keep scanning the horizon, and that gives the eye something to focus on. We can focus on the wingtip out there, perhaps, and then on the instruments. It's just to keep the eye, the acuity of the eye active. Of course, it's easier at night to see other airplanes with their strobes and their navigation lights. They also give us the color vision checks to check for color blindness. They check for hearing, of course. They shine a light, into one ear there. If the light comes out the other side, then you're probably not going to pass your medical. They put us on a bed and they give us what's called a resting ECG. I think Americans call it an EKG, an electrocardiograph. And that's in the resting position when they check the heart for the resting and the pressure patterns in the heart, and they also check the pulse rate. When they've done that, they're happy with that. They then put us on a treadmill and make us go up the slope on the treadmill, and they just speed up the treadmill until they get the heart working at the fastest rate, which is safe, and the target rate when you're taking exercise. So they do that to make sure that the heart is not going to suffer a failure under stress. If we do get seriously stressed in an emergency situation, that the heart is not going to choose that moment to fail. In the RAF, they also give us what's called an EEG, an electroencephalograph, which is when they wire the brain up to electrodes. And then they show you pictures of things and see how the brain reacts to different pictures. They might show you pictures of airplanes, a nice landscape, a nice sunset or something. And then they'll show you a picture of a young lady who's obviously forgotten to finish dressing that morning, and see how the brain actually reacts to that. In my day, it was only a sort of page 3 type photo in the Sun. Sorry for our American friends. I don't know what your sort of soft pornography newspapers are in the States, but nowadays it's probably something more explicit. I don't know. In some countries, they even put a fiber optic camera up your nose. Who said that? a fiber optic camera up your nose, supposedly to look at your sinuses, up your nose into your lower sinuses there and your upper sinuses up in your forehead there. Whereas in fact, they're also looking for evidence of any substance abuse. In other words, if there's any powdery stuff up your nose there, then they know that they might have to take a closer look at you. They do blood tests, they do urine tests, they do motion sickness tests. They put you in a chair which is free to rotate in the 3 planes of rotation, and they turn you upside down, inside out, to see if you are susceptible to motion sickness or motion discomfort. They do psychological profiling to make sure that we're reasonably psychologically stable anyway. They do coordination tests. Now it's done by computer. In my day, it was a simple little cathode ray tube, and they give you a little control column like that and little rudder bars, and you had to keep a spot of light in the center of the cathode ray tube. And while you were doing that, they would then give you mental arithmetic to do, and they would keep loading you and loading you and loading you and loading you until such time as your brain just overloaded. It didn't matter how or when rather your brain overloaded, because everybody's ability to do mental arithmetic is different. What they wanted to see was how you reacted to when things went badly wrong for you, whether you would actually suffer frustration, whether you would suffer panic, resignation to this fact that things had gone badly wrong for you, acceptance of the failure. What they wanted to see was the fact that you could accept the fact that you had failed, and you had the capacity to resolve the situation when some of the pressure was taken off you again, which is akin to a situation which can arise on the flight deck. Things can go wrong very badly and very quickly, and you have to be able to prioritize what you're going to do. Captain Chesley Sullenberger landing his Airbus in the Hudson 2 years ago is a classic example, which is the subject of another talk, which unfortunately I won't have time to do with you today, I don't think. Now, I'm sure all of you have had an eye test at some time in the past. I've made this quite big so that you can all see it from the back. And one of our Polish pilots had gone for his medical, and the doctor said to me, can you read that? He said, read it, he said, I live next door to the guy. Yeah. This is one of my favorite adverts. I don't know if our American friends are familiar with an outfit in the United Kingdom called Specsavers, and they make cut-price glasses. And this was in Dublin. This is the side of a bus, and this is a tram. And the tram has obviously rammed into the side of the bus. The bus driver has either stalled on the crossing, or he's tried to cut across in front of the tram and not quite made it. And the advert on the side of the bus, it says, should have gone to Specsavers, which... You may remember this case. It was many years ago now, but a lady who was flying home from Hong Kong to London on a British Airways flight. She'd had an accident on a motorbike on the way to the hospital, and she had unwittingly fractured a couple of ribs and maybe a slight fracture of the arm as well. She got on board the flight, and then she was taken ill in flight. They paced for the doctor, and this doctor came to help, and he saw that she had got a pneumothorax, which is air within the pleural cavity. So with the equipment he had on board, he had a scalpel, he had some local anesthetic, he had a urinary catheter, some oxygen tubing, some sellotape, some brandy, a coat hanger, and an Evian water bottle. So with great British ingenuity, he improvised a way of putting a chest drain into her chest. Local anesthetic, scalpel from the kit to open her up. The coat hanger was used as an introducer to introduce the urinary catheter into the pleural cavity, and that let the air escape. And she recovered pretty well instantly. She was sitting there having a meal, watching the movie. The doctor went to sleep, was woken up again about 6 hours later to say the lady had been taken badly ill again. The doctor came out of his seat, went to where she was. She was sitting on the toilet, and when she'd gone to the toilet, she'd put the Evian water bottle up on the shelf, which you'd think would be the right thing to do. What had happened was, of course, all the water and everything and the air had drained, had siphoned from the bottle back into the chest cavity again, and she was back to square one. So the doctor took the bottle off the shelf, put it on the floor, all drained back into the bottle again, and she was as right as rain. it was an extraordinary piece of ingenuity and very, very quick thinking on the part of the doctor. Without that, she would probably have died. Anyway, they got her to London, took her off to hospital, and she made a full recovery. In that particular instance, I think British Airways can claim to say, "We'll take more care of you." That used to be their motto, if you remember. Now, there's no trick here, so don't feel that you have to take part if you don't want to. But amazingly, as I say, I do normally find a couple of people who, on each talk, who suffer a degree of color perception anomaly on each talk. If you do find you do have a problem, then you can have a word with your doctor when you get home. Now, this is pretty straightforward, this one here. Sometimes the ship's equipment doesn't render the colors absolutely accurately, but that looks okay to me. That looks as if it's doing quite a good job this morning. Right, top left, can we all see the elephant? Fantastic, amazing, good start. And in the circle on the bottom right? 12, brilliant. Gosh, you're doing well so far. Right, so here's one. What number can we see here, if any? A 6, 8, 5. How many can see no number at all? Several. Are they all males? Sorry, are those all men who have put their hand up there saying they can't see any number at all? Yes? Okay. This is interesting. Can I just see that again? Who can see the 8? Quite a lot, and a couple of females as well. Okay. Who can see the 6? The vast majority. That's what I would have expected. And no number at all again? Very interesting. Okay, that's good. You should see the 6 if you have normal color vision. Now, it's some 7% of the male population, and I was trying to do a quick calculation in my head there to see how many hands went up and see who was male and who was female, and frankly, I didn't manage to work it out in my head in the time that you had your hands up. But it's 7% of the male population will suffer from some form of color perception anomaly. Either they cannot distinguish red from green, or they see red and green differently from other people. Now, this is the commonest form of color blindness, but it affects only less than 0.5% of women. And the reason that this is true is that you probably know that women have got 2 X chromosomes, whereas us blokes have got 1 X and 1 Y chromosome in our genetic makeup. And they think that because of this, the 2 X chromosomes that you've got, that the color perception part of your makeup is located on one of these DNA strings. And the fact that you've got 2, if one is not working, then the other one will take over its duty. And it's been found that in colorblind men, the green or red cones worked improperly. The cones are the color receptors at the back of the eyes, and they worked improperly or not at all. It is thought that the red and green receptors were changed in these men. Now, this is probably due to some change, a duplication of a DNA fragment that occurred some 40 million years ago in our evolution. Okay, let's just try this one here. Which one can we see here? Can we see 21? Yep, is anybody seeing 21? Yep, a couple there. And who's seeing 74? Again, a vast, that's a good majority. 74 is actually the number that's up there. As I say, these colors on that screen are slightly different to the ones I'm getting here, so don't panic. If you're not in the majority, don't worry about it. If you are, as I say, worried about it at all, see your doctor when you get home, just to preclude any problems. And this one here, the last one, 29. Yeah, that's better, isn't it? Yeah, we're all seeing most of that one. So the question is, why is this so crucial when it comes to piloting aircraft? We depend on various degrees of color perception. Only a few of them are critical enough to be interfered with, to actually interfere with our ability to pilot the aircraft. Some examples would be the control tower might use signaling torches, lamps, to give instructions to aircraft on the ground or in the air. There may be a flashing red, a flashing green, steady red, steady green, flashing white, steady white, conveying certain information to aircraft which might have lost their radio, or older aircraft might have no radio at all anyway. There's that. We also have color-coded glide path indications, which I'll show you in a moment. And this is why we need to have red-green color vision. Now, in the flight deck itself, we have got, mostly we have got television screens now, rather than the old analog instruments, the old analog speedometer and altimeter. We have now got we've got CRT presentations of engine performance and the navigation system. This is our weather radar, and this is obviously quite a crucial one here because green is an area of light turbulence, the yellow area is more severe turbulence, and the red indicates more than likely a line of cumulonimbus thunderstorms, this bit up here. So it's obviously pretty important that we get this one right, so that if I was flying up here, that's the aircraft down here, if I was flying up on this track here, it's probably a little bit far, it's a bit late to try and go around this end of it here. I'd probably carry on up there and then take a line of least resistance through there, depending on what the scale of this particular one is. I'm not sure what scale he's got it on here. But that would probably be the line of least resistance without doing a massive detour to get round it. And then this one here, this is what we call our ADI, our attitude direction indicator. It used to be the old artificial horizon. And again, it's in all sorts of different colors. We've got greens, whites, blues. This is brown, obviously. Sky is blue, and brown is the earth. And the idea is to keep the sky up there and the earth down there. If it goes the other way up, something's gone wrong. Okay. The external tasks, as I say, these are the approach lights that we can normally see on the approach, a series of red crossbar lights, and then we have the runway threshold lights. Further down the runway there, you can just see it. We've got what are called VASIs, visual approach slope indicators. On a conventional airplane, we should be seeing 2 reds and 2 whites if we are on the correct glide path. Coming in to park at the gate, we will have what are called PAPAs, Precision Aircraft Parking Aids. We've got all these incredible acronyms in the airline industry. And if we would always turn towards the green, it makes sense. This gives us our centerline indication so that we can park the aircraft absolutely accurately at the gate and turn towards the green, don't turn towards the red. If we turn towards the green, then this one here will also go green. So once we've got 2 greens, then we know that we are slap on the center line. Now, going on to your sort of balance organs, I don't know if you've played that funny old game when you get a broom handle and you put it down like that, and then you spin round and round and round, and then you try and walk off, and it's like being incredibly drunk. That's because your balance organs have been messed up completely by being put into a totally different frame of their rotation. They're not used to being spun round like that. And in your balance organs here, you have got basically little follicles. In these semicircular canals up here, they're at right angles to each other, and in this simplified version of it here, that's the 3 planes that we operate in. We operate in pitch, which is up and down of the nose, roll, which is from side to side, like the ship's been doing, and then we have yaw, where the nose will yaw from side to side. And when we get all these conflicting signals sent to our brain, if we keep our eyes shut, then and you shake your head around, you will get very, very dizzy very, very quickly. This is why I always recommend people, if you do suffer from motion discomfort or seasickness, call it what you like, that you go on deck. Get some fresh air. Don't lie in a dark bunk with your head down, because all you're going to be doing is just having all this fluid in these canals moving round, and they move little hairs, and this sends signals to the brain, and it just makes you feel terrible. If you can see out and you can see a horizon, a clear horizon, and you're getting the same information from these balance organs, you are going to get over that seasickness feeling very much quicker, to my mind. The ideal thing, if you do suffer from it, is nip down to the doctor and see him and have him give you the injection. Or pills. Pills work for some people, but the injection is the way to go. And as far as our sinuses are concerned, as I mentioned earlier, they are very, very sensitive parts of the body, and those can get congested as well, which is why sometimes you can get that excruciating pain in your forehead or under your eyes. I had it one day going into Amsterdam, and I really, really thought the pain was so instantaneous and so excruciating that I thought the windscreen had shattered and that broken glass had flown into my eyes. That's exactly what the pain felt like. I had to climb back up again, wind the cabin back up, the cabin altitude, which we can control manually, wind that back up, and then crank it down again very, very, very slowly to allow the pressure in the sinuses to equalize. As a result of that, I had to have an operation which they put you to sleep, obviously, and then they stick a big Black & Decker drill up your nose, and they drill out all the sinuses there, and then they put one of these wire brushes up there, and they give it a good, bit like getting your, it's a bit like getting your chimney cleaned, you know. It's like that. And then what they do is they stuff it with gauze. It goes right up your nose into the sinuses, all the way around there. And when they wake you up, you think that you can't breathe. You think somebody is suffocating you. So you fight like an idiot against these three big nurses who are sitting on you. And it becomes a bit of a battle. And then about 3 or 4 days later, when everything should have healed up in there, they come along and they take the gauze out, and it goes something like this. And then about 25 minutes later, they're still pulling it out, and then when they got the last bit out, you go, God, it's wonderful. It's the best breath you'll ever take in your life, after the one you take after your birth. I guess it's got to be the second best in your life. Scuba diving. I'm sure we've got a couple of scuba divers here. They know about decompression. And the bends, they will obviously not fly above 8,000 feet within 24 hours of a dive. The deeper you go, the more important this is. Now, I know that the cabin of the aircraft is normally pressurized between 6,000 and 8,000 feet. Even if we're flying at 35,000 feet, the cabin will be between 6 and 8. But if you've been diving to, say, 100 feet for 15 minutes, would that be about right? 15 minutes at 100 feet would be about a normal dive. Is that right? Yeah. If you've been down that long, that deep, that's the day that you're going to have a problem with the cabin pressurization on the aircraft. And through no fault of yours, you are going to have an attack of the bends, which is when the nitrogen bubbles come out of solution in your bloodstream, and it is an agonizing experience, I assure you. Hyperventilation is a very common fear in flight. You know, when something upsets you, you can hyperventilate. In other words, you overbreathe, and by overbreathing, you are effectively washing out the carbon dioxide in your blood, and carbon dioxide is there for a very, very good reason. It balances all the other gases. Now, I don't know what you know. I mean, I don't know if you know what we breathe. We breathe oxygen or nitrogen or carbon dioxide. What do we breathe normally? It's normally nitrogen. The atmosphere is about 79% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, and about 1% of various other gases. So when we start hyperventilating, we can effectively lose consciousness. If we are really, really worried about something, we do this very, very fast, shallow breathing, and this will wash out the carbon dioxide. The best thing you can do in that situation is get a brown paper bag and breathe in and out of it. That way, you'll breathe back in that carbon dioxide again, and it will balance the air composition that your body needs. The opposite to hyperventilation is hypoxia, which is when you lose oxygen. Now, this is actually what I did when I was in a decompression chamber. It hasn't printed up too well on this screen, unfortunately. But what they do is they take you up to about, in this chamber, they take you up to about 35,000 feet, and then they decompress the chamber so that we are deprived of our normal oxygen supply. And what they do is they just make you write out something really quite simple. This is my name of my parents' house, where I lived, and the county where we lived. And that, I can't think where that came in the overall scheme of things. But the unfortunate thing is that that's not too bad. This up here, this absolute scribble, was when I was on the verge of unconsciousness, And the danger is that I thought that that was as good as that. I was totally unaware of the fact that I had lost my ability to perform simple tasks, and I was an incredibly happy person. It's like being exquisitely drunk. You have this sort of euphoria, you have this couldn't care less, you're having a great time. Now, this we used to do as a training exercise. We used to do two. One would be an explosive decompression, in other words, to simulate losing the canopy of a jet fighter, say at 45,000 feet, and then you would be up at 45,000 feet in a second. That's an explosive decompression. The other one they did would be a slow decompression, which is more likely what you would find on an aircraft. If there's a pressurization problem, then you may find that the cabin pressure will just ease out gradually, and the cabin will climb up, we and you will be deprived of your normal oxygen supply, and you'll think this is great, you'll think this is a wonderful day out. Fantastic. There was a case a few years ago of a Greek aircraft where this exact thing happened, and we had to, they actually all lost consciousness, and the aircraft flew on until it ran out of fuel, and they all died, unfortunately, because a valve had not closed properly. And again, this is a picture of what goes on in the hyperbaric chamber. These are the two boys there. Just about to undergo the test. The other thing that happens, of course, when they do decompress it, is the fact that all the cavities in your body, in your sinuses, your ears, even in your gut, those will all expand. And if you've got 6 blokes in one of these chambers, and they've all been on the beer and the curry the night before, you can imagine that is probably not the best place to be honest. As I say, the time of useful consciousness varies depending on the altitude and the speed at which you decompress. At 35,000 feet, your time of useful consciousness from the time the decompression takes place to the time you lose consciousness will be between 15 and 30 seconds. That is why they always brief you on the use of the oxygen mask. Masks like this will drop down. Pull one towards you, place it over your mouth and nose and breathe normally. The bag may not inflate. All this nonsense. But you must get that mask on, and you must do your own mask first before you deal with anybody else, with your children, who I know you all love anyway. But you would have to have this on your own face first. Otherwise, you're going to lose consciousness, and then you're useless to any of your traveling companions, be it your spouse, husband, who's probably behaving like a child at this stage. But as I say, once you are connected to an oxygen supply again, you will make a very quick recovery. Now, this decompression theory it has been examined in the United States as a possible form of execution. And one of our politicians, a gentleman by the name of Michael Portillo, went to the States to investigate this because Michael Portillo is pro-death penalty, but not using the methods available. He's not keen on the, what have we got in the States? What is it? The gas chamber, electric chair, lethal injection, hanging and firing squad, I think, maybe still in one state, because there was a risk of pain. As I've said, this trip in the decompression chamber, you are euphoric when you leave this planet. It's only a matter of minutes from the time you lose consciousness to the time that death will overtake you. You will never know what hit you. There is no pain. There is only this feeling, as I say, of euphoria. Now, I can't condone it. I'm not arguing the rights and wrongs of the death penalty. But I've often thought myself that if I ever was terminally ill and I was in excruciating pain, that's the way I would choose to go, to be quite honest. I wouldn't go to that place in Switzerland, what do they call it, Dignitas or something, where you've got to swallow the pill and then you're gone within sort of minutes of that. I'd go for this every time. This is a fantastic way to go. I hope it's not, no, I'm not planning it for this afternoon or anything, you understand. Now, I know that I have got to keep this a little bit short today because we've got the Sunday service coming up here. So I think at this stage I'm going to leave this one for today. If we've got time on the other talk, I'll go on just to, because the next part of the show actually shows you the decompression chamber, and it shows Michael Portillo trying to carry out these very, very simple tasks of, these kids' toys where you've got a ball with plastic ball, you've got shapes, and you have to put the shapes through through the holes in the ball, and he can't even do simple tasks like that. People might say Michael Portillo couldn't do that anyway. Sorry to our Americans who probably won't get the sort of finesse of that joke. No, Michael Portillo is a very clever politician. So for today, I'm going to leave it there. As I say, if we've got time on the next one, I will come back and we will look at that again tomorrow or the next day, whenever I'm on again. I think it's tomorrow we're back on again. But for today, I've left to hand over to Captain to carry out his Sunday service. So once again, thank you ever so much for coming in this morning. I hope you've learned something. I hope it's been of some interest to you. Tomorrow, we're going to do Glamour in the Skies, which is all about our fantastic cabin crew and how we work with them, and how the industry is changing with low-cost carriers and all this. It's quite a fun one to finish on. Anyway, thanks once again. Have a great day. Thank you very much.